Hi, welcome to On the Tourism Trail. I'm Pamela Martin, your host. And today we're at the beautiful Mount Nevis Hotel on the north side of the island of Nevis. And I have a wonderful guest with me today, and she is Simone Mills, who is a digital creator. Welcome, Simone.
Thanks for having me, Pam.
Thank you for joining me on the Tourism Trail today. So, Simone, you are tightly connected to Nevis.
Yes, I am.
Tell us how you're connected to Nevis, first of all.
My family is from Nevis. Although I was born in New York, both of my parents are from Nevis. I would have spent the first 6 years of my life in Nevis, going back and forth every summer in Nevis, spending, summers at Culturama at a young age in Nevis, and then most recently coming during the pandemic to spend time in Nevis and work remotely.
Okay, so you came to Nevis, so you were born in the States, came to Nevis, so you're quite, having a affinity for Nevis in that way, even though you're really, from the States. And so when we talk about digital creation now, how did you get into digital creation? So we're going to talk about digital creation, what you create, why you create. So how did you first start creating content?
Yeah, so I first started in November of 2016. I started off as SimSima Eats the World, and I'm now Everything SimSima. One day in November, my cousin was like, you should really turn this into an Instagram. I was that person at dinner taking pictures all the time. So I ended up just throwing up an Instagram, calling it SimSima Eats the World. And it was all about eats. I remember my first exact post being a green tea gnocchi that I had in New York. So that particular meal is obviously significant to my journey. And then most recently in 2020, I decided to rebrand and name it Everything SimSima after incorporating things like culture, so carnival. I ended up including carnival after one of my Labor Day experiences in New York. And I remember people gravitating towards it. And I was like, okay, this is obviously content that people want to see. So let me provide that. So I started creating more culture and carnival related content and obviously travel as well. So now it's not only just food, but more so food, carnival, culture, and travel.
Okay, so it's Everything SimSima.
Yes.
How did you come up with that name?
So I wanted it to be everything, but then I was like, gotta make it a little bit more personalized. And Ting is a drink that's popular here in Nevis.
Right.
Happens to be one of my favorite local drinks. So I was like, okay, let's just drop the H and make it kind of with a Caribbean twist and name it Everything. And then SimSima comes from the Beanie Man song, SimSima Who Got the Keys. You know which song I'm talking about. So and that's how I came up with the name Everything SimSima.
Okay, so you started to take food content, and then what happened? How did you incorporate Nevis specifically into your content, and why?
Yeah, so I realized a lot of people thought that it was cool that I was taking a boat over to St. Kitts to grab breakfast, or taking the sea bridge over to St. Kitts for the day. These were all things that a lot of people gravitated towards, even just the leisure beach walks, that sort of stuff. So I was like, okay, this is obviously home to me, so I didn't think it was content at first. But once I started incorporating content of Nevis, I realized people really did gravitate towards that, and I started incorporating a lot of things from Nevis.
Okay, so is this what you do full time?
I don't do this full time.
Okay, so what do you do full time, and how do you fit this in?
Yeah.
Because now you have how many followers?
13K.
13,000 followers on Instagram. So what do you do as your regular job, and then how do you fit this into your schedule?
Yeah, so full-time, I am an executive at a nonprofit in New York, and the way that I incorporate this, I try to incorporate this by creating content on the weekends or just, filming everyday things, whether it's me in New York City or me here in Nevis. I try to think of the things I think people would be interested in seeing. For me, it's more so, it obviously is a hobby. It started off as a hobby, still is a hobby, but I'm taking it a lot more seriously now. A lot more serious than in 2016.
So Simone, what platforms are you on right now? So we know you're on Instagram because we talked about that. What other platforms are you on?
So in addition to Instagram, I'm also on TikTok, and I also have a website that I usually update with content as well.
Okay, so what kind of content goes on your website?
So the most recent content would have been sugar mask content, but the content that goes on my website tends to be longer formed content that is more in depth and more about experiences, almost like guides for those thinking about experiences and that
wonderful,
sort of stuff.
wonderful. So let's get back to Nevis. You place quite a lot of emphasis on Nevis on your Instagram specifically that I've seen. I've seen you have some wonderful experiences here. I've seen you at the spa at Four Seasons. I've seen you at Golden Rock. I've seen you eating, of course, is what you like to do. So tell us, how did you manage to work with, Four Seasons and Golden Rock and all these other brands that you've worked with?
Yeah, so I remember specifically for Four Seasons, when I was coming back during one of my trips from New York, I ended up staying at the Four Seasons for a visit during my quarantine period. So I quarantined at Four Seasons, and it was my way of showing that there are different options available during that time for quarantine.
Great.
Yes. So sometimes when you're reaching out to brands and wanting to collab, you have to think outside of the box and think about how it would be mutually beneficial for both parties. That stay was definitely fantastic. It was nice to experience the Four Seasons and to see what quarantine...
Especially because there's one on Nevis. So
Yes.
it's like, you get the experience of what other visitors experience.
And just to know about the welcome back to Nevis, laid out on the bed, it was just like chef's kiss. Being welcomed back home. So yeah, that stay was definitely amazing for me.
Excellent. And so you've also been featured in Travel Noir, which is a digital media company serving millennials of the African diaspora. So tell us how that came about and what that entailed.
Yeah, so Travel Noir reached out in December of 2021, and they featured me in an article that talked about being a Black expat or a digital nomad. So I spoke about my experience about migrating back to Nevis and spending my time during COVID back home, during the pandemic back home, and kind of working remotely and how that had an impact on my mood significantly. I just feel like Nevis is obviously a happy place for so many of us, right? Yes, we both can attest to that for sure. There just is like a higher level of self that's available. It might just be like the fact that there's sun all the time here. But I did speak about that, and I highlighted Nevis in that sense.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to a couple of other questions, but I want to, since you talked about the sun and the moods, recently you had a little break from creating, or at least posting content. So I guess it's something we've all heard of, probably writer's block. So did you have creator's block? Tell us what happened there.
I definitely did have creator's block. I lost somebody significant in my life last year, and I kind of had to take a pause and just reflect and think about the content that I wanted to pursue and what I really wanted the message of my content to be. I think it is important. We don't talk about it a lot in the creator community, but it is important to take the time that you need and to give yourself grace and just, be reflective of that. But I definitely had creator's block. I think sometimes, you're constantly creating content and it begins to feel monotone.
Right.
So sometimes that break is needed to then gain like different perspectives, to think about how you can differentiate the content that you would have been created. Maybe different ways of editing, different ways of pivoting, different ways to reach your audience. So that break was definitely needed for me, but I'm back.
Okay, so now you're back. We're glad you're back. So what have you learned, or what do you think you're going to do differently, or what came out of that experience, that downtime?
Definitely for me, during that downtime, I realized how not everything needs to be thought about too much, right? So it's often the content that you don't overthink that does well, right? And oftentimes the content that I spend a lot of time editing, the transitions, editing the color grades, all these different things are the ones that people are just like, okay, cool. But it's the ones that I don't overthink that actually end up doing well. And I feel like the authenticity of those content that is not overthought
Right.
are the ones that, you know, really do reach and your audience, and like they're able to feed off of that authenticity. So that was one of the things that I was really thinking about, and just like showing up as me and not, you know, really curating things, but just throwing things out there as it is.
Right. So, I mean, we're in beautiful Nevis. It's, you know, it's every day, it's sunny, it's beautiful. You talked about, you know, the happy, the sun. Give us a contrast now before your experience being in New York and your experience being in Nevis in terms of, you know, how you feel, what your outlook is, what your days are like, you know.
Yeah, so when I'm home in Nevis, my days are a lot more chill. I feel like island life, you know, we have this saying like island time, but it really, truly is island time. Like things are just a lot laid back. And anyone who knows New York knows it's like quick hustle, bustle, like on the move all the time, right? So anytime I'm back home in Nevis, it's really a great time for me to kind of reflect and just like, you know, take things in. Like there's just so much beauty in Nevis. Like I don't mean this figuratively, but like actually, like there literally is, like you look around, you look outside, there's some sort of view, whether it be a mountain view or seaside view.
True.
There's always a view,
view.
literally. So and these are the kind of things that kind of boost your mood, right? So even in addition to the sun, you just look outside and there's like some sort of view. And anyone who knows me personally knows I love palm trees. So anytime I'm near some sort of palm tree or I see a palm tree, it's like an instant mood booster for me. So yeah, that's the main difference between New York and Nevis is the palm trees for me.
So take us through a typical day, you know, especially in Nevis. Take us through a typical day. Do you wake up and say, okay, I'm going to go here today and create some content, or do you just have your equipment with you and take it by the by? You know, what's the process?
Yeah, so I'll be real. In an ideal world, sometimes I have these creative ideas, and if you look through the notes in my phone, like you'll see like a bunch of like random notes with like, okay, here's an idea. This is what I want the caption. This is what I want the audio. Here are the hashtags. And oftentimes I end up not filming it, right? So and that's another thing that I kind of thought about while I was on my break was, you know, like how do you navigate creating content authentically, right? And not just curating the content,
right.
And not overthinking it. So I just, you know, if I feel like flying my drone today and getting a drone shot, like that's what I'm going to do. If I look outside and I'm like, oh, wow, it's sunny outside, I'm going to do that. Or maybe I see, you know, something random, like I see a nice palm tree, I'm going to shoot a picture of it on my phone and just like throw it up. But it's like not overthinking it. And I think that's kind of how I go through my days now, is just not overthinking the content, but more so just making it more authentic and not heavily curated.
So how much are you back and forward? And do you have any plans to be in Nevis more often? Do you have any plans to, you know, expand what you do? I mean, what are your plans? I know you love Nevis. I mean, you just can't get enough.
I literally can't. Literally like all of us, I can't get enough of it. If I could have it my way, I'd be here every weekend. Every day that I'm off, I would be in Nevis, right? But we all know with the airline prices, we can't really do that. But my future plans are to just create content when I'm in Nevis, create content that I think people want to see. There are often times I'll think about content as just being, you know, or just doing something that I think, okay, I do this on a regular, right? Take the boat on a regular, whereas someone who sees that content that's created will be like, oh, wow, she took a boat to go to St. Kitts for the day to grab KFC. You know, it's like small things like that right. I feel like people gravitate towards.
You know, those things are things that I sit back and I go, wow, that's so amazing, you know?
Right.
After living in England for 27 years and, you know, being here for a lot longer. But those little things, to me, I still marvel. You know, I still think, God, this is amazing. When I get on the ferry and go to St. Kitts and I'm, you know, or go on the island and just do random things. You know, to me, it's every day, it's just fresh and it's just exciting and exhilarating. For me, it never gets tired.
Right. It never gets old. It never gets tired. Or even when you go to the beach and you see the fishermen coming in with fresh fish, like, where else do you see that? You don't see that in New York. So these are things that I think when thinking about my content and moving forward, I just want to highlight those things more that I usually take for granted, right? Because we've lived here or we've experienced it so much that we don't really think other people outside would benefit from it. So definitely moving forward, that's the kind of content that I'm hoping to emphasize on.
That's fabulous. So just remind us again what your platforms are and remind us of your name again.
So my name is Simone Mills. I go by Everything SimSima on Instagram, TikTok, and everythingsimsima.com.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we sign off today?
Thank you for having me, Pam.
You're welcome. Been waiting to have you for a long time.
Yes.
So I'm happy that we're finally made it.
I'm so happy to finally have a conversation with you, and thank you for always supporting local creatives. It's not lost on us.
You're welcome. It's great to have you. So thank you for viewing On the Tourism Trail today. Join us again next week when we continue to explore the ins and outs of this beautiful island paradise of Nevis. Bye for now.
Nowhere but my island right here, right here, right here. We live the Caribbean. Nowhere but my island right here, right here, right here. We live the Caribbean.
This program is sponsored by the Bank of Nevis Limited. Thank you, the Bank of Nevis.
Banking is now an essential part of our life. That's why the Bank of Nevis Limited is making life easier for all of our customers. As a bond customer, waiting in line is a thing of the past. Deposit checks or cash at any one of our Charlestown ATMs today. Short on funds? No problem. It's easy making withdrawals using your Bond Visa debit card. Experience how much easier life can be with just one swipe of your debit card. Whether it's online or in store, we've got you covered. Easy and delicious. Now that's a great combo. We fully understand that sometimes life can get hectic. Log on to Bond's online banking platform and with just a click, you can save the day by easily transferring funds from your savings to your checking account. Just like that. And your funds are transferred in real time. Perfect. With a single swipe of your debit card or a few clicks for online banking, the Bank of Nevis Limited will continue to improve the quality of your life so you can continue to live your best life. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life.